right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for the inaugural episode.
The pilot
of the Below Average Joe's UFC podcast and more.
It's kind of a mouthful.
It is a mouthful.
But
it gets the point across.
Right.
So the way this is really going to work is we're going to start by introducing ourselves, just talking a little bit about our background with the sport, maybe just some of our personal background, and then we'll get into the fight night from last night and some news and things like that. So just to start, my name's Noah.
Oh, that's my segue. My name's Dominic.
And just a little bit about us. We went to the same high school together in a small town, southwest Ohio. We continued to go to the same college together at Bowling Green State University.
Go Falcons.
Go Falcons.
Talons up. Is that still a thing?
Yeah, I think so. And we roomed together for our first 2 years of college, so I think it's needless to say we're pretty tight.
We're tight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean that's pretty much all about me. Was there anything you wanted to add to as far as your background?
No. I mean, really, we have pretty similar backgrounds.
Yeah, we really do.
Business major for you.
Yep.
Sport management for me.
Right. So
there you go.
Yeah, as far as our background with the sport, for me, I guess compared to what a lot of people who watch UFC probably as much as we do, it's probably I'm a fairly new viewer, I guess.
I'd say so.
Yeah. So, but to go back even further, my kind of roots, like the kind of the timeline for me was I started gaining more interest in the sport around 2010, 2011 when Brock Lesnar became heavyweight champion. Now, a lot of that was because I grew up a pro wrestling kid, as did Dom.
Yes.
So
WWE, WWF.
Yeah, big WWE guys. So when Brock Lesnar became heavyweight champ, that interested me. I would look up some of his fights on YouTube and stuff like that. But it never really stuck with me up until probably around June 2016. Actually, Dom invited me over to his house.
Yes.
To watch
199.
UFC 199.
Michael the Count Bisping. Shocked the world, right?
Yeah.
17 days notice.
Yeah, he became middleweight champ by beating Luke Rockhold.
Yes.
And really, from that day on, I just completely fell in love with it.
Yeah.
And really, since then, I have really devoted a mass amount of time into learning the history of the sport and keeping up to date with what's going on. I've seen every pay-per-view. I'm working on seeing every fight night that's ever been done.
Now listen, ladies and gentlemen, he has a spreadsheet, okay? This is a real thing. And it's available upon reference. All you gotta do is ask.
Yes.
It's real.
I do have a spreadsheet. It's definitely I get a little nerdy with you.
It's impressive, though.
Yeah.
It's impressive.
I thank you. So, what about your background with sport?
Yeah. UFC, gosh. I mean, we're talking youngin'. I wish I remembered the first pay-per-view I ever watched, but I know it was back in the good old days. I'd say early 2000s, maybe it was the Chuck and Tito days for sure. Rich Franklin.
Sure.
Basically Ultimate Fighter 1 era, I guess is when I started.
What a time.
So not the very beginning, obviously, because I'm not even that old, but pretty early on, and I've just stuck with it ever since. In the recent years, I'd say the last 4 to 5 years, it's when it's became really serious for me, like a passion. Like I'd pick to watch the UFC over any other sport.
Agreed.
And that's a bold statement,
yeah.
But it's just something about it. Doesn't matter who's fighting.
Right.
It's just there's something about watching the sport of MMA as a whole, specifically in the UFC. It just pulled me in. And now I'm just stuck.
Yeah,
I'm there.
There's nothing quite like it.
Yeah, there really isn't.
And we also we've both been to one live event
in the land, baby.
Yeah, we went and saw UFC 203 in Cleveland.
September 2016.
Yeah, and we saw Stipe Miocic, the
baddest man on the planet, baby.
UFC heavyweight champion. It was his first title defense against Alistair Overeem.
Oh,
great fight, and really, what's funny is looking back on it, like the pay-per-view as a whole, like it was a great night.
Yes.
It was probably the best sporting event I've ever been to.
Yes, that's what I was about to say. The best sporting event I've ever been to. I'm gonna shameless plug, right? I'm not being cocky or anything. I've been to one Super Bowl, luckily, And maybe it's because I didn't have a dog in the fight during that game, and I love Stipe, but like that was the best overall sporting event I've ever been to. Not to mention before meeting, let's see, Cody Garbrandt right before he became champ.
Right.
Cowboy Cerrone. Hello.
Yeah.
Matt Brown. And in line to meet Anthony Showtime Pettis.
You forgot one that we met.
Wait. Forrest Griffin.
Yeah.
Hello. UFC
Legend.
Hall of Famer, kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
I did forget about that.
Yeah, but no, it's understandable. I mean, that was a long day, but it was an awesome day.
Awesome night.
But my point was that the fights themselves, like if you really look at, especially like the main card, like there have been plenty of better pay-per-views.
Yeah,
like
have.
if you really like, if we were watching it on TV, we'd be like, oh, it was a pretty good pay-per-view.
Yeah, nothing crazy.
But like
in person,
yeah. So I couldn't imagine going and seeing. You know,
I think it helped. We had, I mean, it was kind of a historical pay-per-view. CM Punk's debut. Hello.
Which is hilarious.
I mean, like Uriah Faber basically got put into retirement that fight.
Well, it was his retirement fight, and then he came back.
Stipe's first title defense. I mean, gosh, the list goes on. I feel like there was one other thing.
Fabrizio doing that crazy.
Fabrizio started the fight against Travis Brown with a, I don't even know. It was like running side.
It was a jumping head kick.
Jumping head kick.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was insane.
What a night.
Yeah, and
can't wait to go back. We were supposed to be at UFC Columbus in March. Unfortunately, got canceled due to all of this going on across the world. But when we're able to get full arenas again, it's going to be a great time going back to some fights.
Yeah, I agree. So I guess to segue off that, we'll tell you just a little bit about kind of how this is going to work. There'll be some growing pains. We'll figure it out as we go, but ultimately right now we're trying to stick with like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday release schedule. UFC usually does their events every Saturday with the occasional Wednesday card or
Contender Series
on Tuesdays. Ultimate Fighter's supposed to be coming back, so that'll be something else.
Oh, didn't even think about that.
Didn't think about that. But occasionally they may take a week off on Saturdays, so there'll be different release schedules. But we're trying to stick to the Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Like
we'll have even if say there is a week like you said without a pay-per-view, without a fight night. We plan to do some special episodes just to fill in, for example, our Mount Rushmore of the UFC, our top 10 list. I mean, the list could really go on and on.
Yeah, I mean we could do stuff like that for.
Yeah,
we could talk for hours.
We could talk for hours. We've literally done it. We're finally just putting a microphone in front of us.
So, in case you couldn't tell, this is going to be a UFC-centered podcast. But that is not to say that there may not be times during these podcasts where we won't talk. It's not like this is our life. We have other interests. We both love other sports. Football, baseball, basketball.
Yeah.
We love music, movies, video games.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure we'll be getting into some stuff about UFC 4 that's coming out this Friday.
Yeah, this Friday.
So there will be probably some stuff on this channel about that. But it will be UFC centered.
Yes.
So if you're someone that's either loves the sport or is just maybe a casual viewer or just maybe
new to the sport,
looking to get into it, I think this will be a great podcast for you to get started because we are guys that really
we can relate.
We're relatively young to being passionate viewers.
I think so. Yeah.
So I think it's fair to say that like this would be a good starting point for you.
Right.
But I guess we'll just go ahead and get into it. We're going to start with some of the relevant news stories going on.
The past weekish?
Yeah. It around the past weekish going on in the world of MMA. And we're going to start with the lightweight champ, the dominant lightweight champ.
Hello.
Habib Nurmagomedov.
He's a big deal.
Obviously, unfortunately, recently, the passing of his father, it's put a lot of sort of, I guess...
What if on his future?
There's been a lot of, like, just pessimism about, like, maybe when he would fight next.
How he will perform.
Yeah, or if he would even fight again.
Right.
Things like that. And actually, Joe Rogan had posted on his Instagram talking about when they announced that Khabib will be defending his title against Justin Gaethje in October. So at UFC 254.
Yep.
So
huge fight.
Yeah, and he posted just basically gushing about it because it isn't a big fight.
Oh, it's big.
And he commented, Khabib did, and he basically said, just as plain as I can make it, he said Justin in October, and then he said GSP in, was it March? April.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, in case you don't know what GSP stands for, George St. Pierre, one of the greatest, if not the greatest UFC fighter to ever walk in that octagon.
Yeah, and it was, I mean, there had been rumors for the last couple of years that the UFC had been trying to make that fight happen.
And that GSP wanted it, Khabib wanted it, they both wanted it.
And I guess both sides just couldn't really come to like a agreement. But I'm curious, Dom, kind of what your initial thoughts are on if, obviously he's got to get through Gaethje.
Right, I was going to say, I think that's kind of the first thing. That's no stepping stone. I mean, Justin Gaethje is the highlight reel for a reason. And I think nobody expects him to do well because we have not seen him wrestle. Mm-hmm. But he is a great wrestler, and he has the accolades to back that up. So it's a matter of, I guess, just seeing it, right? We can only talk about it so much without seeing the fight. But I do believe that if he can neutralize Khabib's wrestling, which, let's be real, he's going to get taken down. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when in the fight that he gets taken down. But how can he do once he's on his back? Can he get back to his feet? Yeah. And can he utilize his leg kicks like he usually does? Because if you're leg kicking, Khabib's going to grab a hold of you.
Yeah.
So I think those are the biggest things for Justin, but I do believe this is Khabib's biggest test. Outside of Tony, which we'll probably never get to see, unfortunately.
So let's say that the plan is for, let's say the UFC's buying into this plan, and it's going to be Gaethje in October, and then GSP in April.
Right.
Do you think that GSP fight still happens if Khabib loses to Gaethje?
I think it could happen either way. However, from a promotional standpoint, if Khabib is 29-0, and GSP is 26-2 or something like that.
Yeah.
2-division champion, 3-time total champ because he won the welterweight belt twice. Mm-hmm. That's a huge fight either way, but I think that's where you can have the fight even if Khabib does lose, because you can't deny his greatness. He would be 28-1 instead of 29-0. And the fight I don't think should happen at 155 anyway. So Khabib will vacate the belt regardless. At least that's what I envision happening. So if he were to lose to Justin, I do think you can still do the fight, but it would hinder the promotional aspect of
it might hurt
30-0. Who's the GOAT? I think that's literally what you can promote it as.
Yeah.
Who is the GOAT?
Yeah, there's a lot of hype that could be lost if Khabib's already been beaten.
Yes.
A lot of people, GSP, for all this talk we've had about he's one of the best ever, and that's undisputable.
Yes.
He is
you cannot deny he's one of the best.
But he has not been active since, his last fight, he did go up and fight Michael Bisping for the middleweight title, beat him at UFC 217. That was
Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, that was back in 2017.
Yeah.
Towards the end of 2017.
November, yeah.
Yeah. So, and before that, he hadn't fought since that controversial decision win over Johnny Hendricks, which was probably 3 years before that or so.
It was, he was retired for a little while.
So he has not been super active over the last 6 years. So there's a lot of questions about that fight, like if GSP,
he would be, sorry to interrupt. He's 39 now. Might be 40 by the time April rolls around. I don't know when his birthday is, but so that's another thing where I'm not upset if the fight doesn't happen, right? Because I just, you're getting a guy that's no longer in his prime, and granted he's probably still great. Khabib is in his prime right now. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. It's tough.
I have a hard time believing that the UFC brass really want that fight to happen. Now, Dana did say that if that's what Khabib wanted, then he would try to do that because he just talked about how much respect he had for Khabib and all this stuff. But it's obvious the fight that they really want to make. They really want to make the rematch with Conor.
They really do, and I just don't agree with that. But You know, it is what it is.
Yeah,
Money talks, right?
And we'll get more into this fight as
Yeah.
the weeks go on, but just trying to get some initial thoughts, kind of how we're feeling about really Khabib versus GSP, but he does have a big test ahead of him.
In a fight I cannot wait to see.
Yeah. And I guess the next story, the August 29th fight night main event. Yair Rodriguez is out of the fight against Zabit Magomedsharipov.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice pronunciation.
Yeah, I know.
That was nice.
So this is a fight that it just doesn't seem like it's one of those things.
It's another Tony Khabib.
Yeah, you had that weird debacle a couple years ago where Yair basically got released for like a week.
What happened?
They basically said, and Dana pretty much all but said that it was because he wouldn't agree to that fight.
Right.
So
which I wouldn't want to fight Zabit either, by the way.
So the UFC have been trying to find a replacement. There's been a lot of talk online, people wanting Calvin Kattar to get a rematch against Zabit. They fought the first time probably like 7 months ago or so.
That's a good. I can't remember.
I can't remember the exact.
Zabit hasn't fought in a while.
Yeah, and when they fought the first time, for those of you that don't know, every main event or title fight, regardless of if it's the main event, but every main event, like on every fight night, it's a 5-rounder compared to the rest of the fights. There are 3-round fights.
Right.
But due to some set of circumstances, the first fight with Calvin Kattar and Zabit was only a 3-rounder, even though it was the main event of that fight night.
Yes.
And Zabit pretty much won pretty handedly the first 2 rounds.
As he has with everyone.
But then in that 3rd round, Calvin Kattar came back strong, surging, and Zabit looked like he was cracking. Ultimately, Zabit gets the win. Everybody just questions, though, like, what would have happened if that was 5 rounds?
Yeah.
So that's led to why people want to see the rematch.
And the Calvin Kattar right now is on a tear.
He's looked great. It's not like he just lost that fight and has just been sitting
His
around.
fight just a couple weeks ago against Dan Ige, wow, he looked incredible. And Ige had never been finished, I don't think, prior to that fight. And he didn't get finished. It was a decision. But it was dominant. Just, he beat him up.
Yeah.
And now I understand why Ige has never been finished. Because that's a tough guy. Not to take anything away from Ige, but Kattar looks like he's on another level right now.
And understandably, Zabit, from his Twitter account, has basically said that, like, you know, he respects Calvin Kattar, he likes the guy, but he doesn't believe, like, he doesn't think he should have to take that fight again. He already beat him once.
Zabit called out Alex instead.
He called out the champ, Alexander the Great.
The Great.
And, you know, Alexander basically said, I'm not a replacement fighter, but I will fight you in the future, I'm sure.
Hopefully you get an opponent. Yeah. And then he responded again, I think. He asked for either September or October.
Okay.
I just...
I'm curious.
He was just in another war, Alex. So September's a little close. October, maybe.
I'm curious what your thoughts are as far as, are you confident that Zabit gets a replacement for that main event, or, like, and who might it be?
I think if they get a replacement, it would be Kattar. I think Kattar would be game because I think he wants to prove people wrong.
Right.
And show that he can win that fight, especially if it goes 5 rounds. And this one would be, I would assume, depending on when it would be booked. Because if they book it too close in advance, they might keep it at 3. But I would like to see that fight, but if not, I think you try and get Zabit a fight as soon as possible. I personally would love to see Zabit face Max Holloway. I think that would be really fun. Former champ. The greatest featherweight of all time. Undeniable, in my opinion. As of right now. Yeah, Alex can still do it, but right now Max is the best.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much him and Aldo. That's probably
Aldo. And when you beat Aldo twice.
Yeah. No, I completely agree.
That would be a fun fight, I think. So those are the 2 options. But if we're talking August 29th, I think Kattar's the choice. And if it doesn't happen, then get Zabit a fight as soon as possible.
Yeah, that's kind of how I'm feeling. I'm not super confident that fight gets made for the 29th.
3 weeks out.
And I really don't know who else they could have step in. I mean, if you look at the rankings, Max Holloway, I don't see taking that fight.
No, not on short notice.
You got number 2, Brian Ortega, who's set to face number 4, Korean Zombie.
Ooh, that's a podcast for another day. Hello.
And then you got number 3, Zabit. Number 5, Yair, who just pulled out. Then you got Calvin Kattar at number 6. Number 7, Josh Emmett. He just tore his MCL.
Yeah, and he won the fight.
Yeah, so he's going to be out for a while. And then you got like Frankie Edgar, who's already.
He's fighting in a couple weeks.
He's fighting at bantamweight against Pedro Munoz.
Is that the 22nd?
Maybe.
I think
it probably is, and we'll be talking about that here in the next week or so.
Shameless plug. Be ready. Be ready for that episode.
But then after that, I mean, you're talking about like maybe Jeremy Stevens.
He's always game.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure that fight already happened.
I think they have fought. Yeah.
And
they had a barn burner.
Yeah, I remember that fight. And then I mean, after that, you got guys like Arnold Allen, Sadiq Youssef, Dan Ige.
And those fights are too much of a lose-lose for Zabit.
Yeah.
If he beats him, it's like whatever. And if he loses, then he's just going to hurt himself.
Yeah, so it's kind of
So I think it's Cater on the 29th or nothing. And then from there, I think you have at least a little bit more time.
But I'm pretty confident that if they're they end up scrapping the main event, I'm pretty confident that Zabit will be the next title challenger.
I have no issue with him fighting for a title if he doesn't get a fight on the.
There's
20th.
a lot of people calling for Max to get a third fight because for those of you that maybe aren't aware, Max Holloway, dominant champion, he loses the belt at UFC 245 in a unanimous decision to Alexander Volkanovski.
A clear decision.
It was a very.
Some think otherwise, but he did.
The first fight I thought was pretty clear
Yes.
win for Volk.
Yes.
Then they rematched just like a month ago, Fight Island.
251.
Yeah, 251 Fight Island card, and
Tough.
Once again, Volk gets the nod in a split decision this time.
In a fight,
most of the MMA community, even Dana White,
right?
Pretty much everybody but the 2 judges
right.
that scored that fight for Volk thought Max won. However, I will say that it was a very close fight.
You can't call it a robbery.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those fights where you get done watching it, Max loses, and if you're a Max fan, you're like, oh, damn, that was a robbery.
Because we're all Max fans. I mean, how can you not
not love Max?
How can you not be a Max fan?
The best is blessed.
Yeah,
right.
yeah, exactly.
And don't forget, mini blessed.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother story. I'd love to get mini blessed on the podcast.
Yeah. But no, so ultimately though, I think that setting up that third fight, I don't know if that really does.
I think it's unfair to Alex.
Yeah.
Because if you're in Alex's shoes, you're like, okay, I've beat him twice.
Right.
The people that are judging the fight said that I won twice. Mm-hmm. So you're just going to keep giving Max a title shot until I either finish him or Max beats me.
Right.
And if Max wins by decision, well, then you just
do
it again,
you have
right?
To do fights 4 and 5.
As much as I love Max, I don't want to see that fight right now.
Yeah.
I think Max, all he needs is one fight. I think they each get one fight in away from each other. If they both win, then you can do it again. But right now, I don't want to see an immediate.
And that's why I think that Zabit has pretty much basically kind of lucked himself into possibly a title shot here due to the unfortunate circumstances of Yair having to pull out. Because really, the rest of the top of the heap there are either taken or injured or whatever.
Yes.
So it makes a lot of sense, and Zabit has really proven that he is legit. And honestly, I don't know right now. I don't want to say for sure, but I could potentially pick Zabit over Volk in that fight too.
I think it's intriguing. Zabit is so big.
Yes.
For their weight class.
Yes.
Very long, lanky. I don't know what he walks around as because he's skinny. But he's just a large man for that weight class. And Alex is small. Mm-hmm. Even though he used to be 215 pounds back in the day playing rugby, he's small. He could, Henry Cejudo is the same size as him, basically.
Mind you, he just said he used to play rugby at
215 pounds. And if you don't know, featherweight is 145.
He is the 145-pound champion. It's ridiculous. But, yeah, so there'll probably be a lot more to come with that. So just... we'll give you the updates as they come as far as that card on the 29th and just, I guess, the next featherweight title fight in general.
Yes.
But moving on here, a couple guys got released this week. We had Ray Borg, the former flyweight title challenger.
Oh, wow. I forgot about that. I did see that on MMA Fighting.
Yeah, Ray Borg got released. And then Corey Anderson, probably the bigger name.
Yes.
The number 4 ranked light heavyweight. He has been released and immediately signed with Bellator, the second biggest MMA promotion in the United States, I would say.
Oh, yeah.
So just kind of, Dom, trying to get your thoughts on, I guess, those two guys, like their releases and maybe what you think about the whole thing.
Borg's definitely a great fighter, former title challenger. Don't forget how he got finished in that fight. The craziest armbar I've ever seen.
He was the guy so he lost to Demetrius Johnson, who was the dominant flyweight champion, and that was the fight where Mighty Mouse passed Anderson Silva.
My goat. That's a different episode, though.
For the most consecutive title defenses.
Yeah.
So, he does have his place in UFC lore or UFC history.
Yeah.
But unfortunately for him, man, flyweight is the lightest male division. It's 125 pounds. He had a ton of problems making weight in that division.
Yep.
So then he moves up to bantamweight, which is 10 pounds higher.
And he's too small.
But he has also still had weight troubles.
It's weird.
There. It's very strange because you feel like he could make it. Like he kind of has the build of someone who could make that weight. But yet he has had so many issues with it. I mean, you're talking about like not just missing weight, but also just pulling out of fights due to these kind of issues.
Mm-hmm.
So that was basically the last straw. Was he just had to pull out of another fight like a week ago, a couple weeks ago, whatever it was, and that's why he got cut. It was like this is like I saw a tweet that was listing off all of the basically pullouts he's had or missed weights, and it was like 10, and he's been with the company for 6 years.
Yeah, wow.
That's just too many. It's too many. But ultimately I hope the best for him. I'm sure he's still a young guy, so I believe he's 27, and I am sure if he can get that kind of under control, whatever it is, I'm sure he'll be back, because whether it's flyweight or bantamweight, because they're always looking for guys in those lighter weight divisions, and I could totally see him coming back in a couple years, just go on.
Or maybe, do you foresee him maybe going to another organization?
Maybe
if it's not even Bellator.
You got ONE FC out there. You got like Ryzen.
There's options.
Some of those though, like the PFL, for example, they've had a lot of trouble with COVID-19 going on, just getting restarted. So it's not a great time to be on the free agent market unless you're planning to go to one of the biggest organizations. So
another free agent, by the way. Michael Chandler, hello.
Yes, Michael Chandler. Well, before we get into Michael Chandler,
I'm jumping the gun.
I want to touch on
Corey Anderson.
Corey Anderson. So, Corey Anderson, I looked it up before this podcast. 9-5 record in the UFC. He was I believe he won the Ultimate Fighter season 19. So he came in with quite a bit of steam. When you win the Ultimate Fighter, you're kind of like looked at as like, all right, you're a legit prospect.
Yeah, you're legit. And as soon as you enter, as soon as you win that, you're fighting somebody that's really good.
Ultimately, for him, he's just he's always been a guy that's been around the top, and that's.
Is he a gatekeeper?
He's kind of had that role. I mean, if you look at his losses, he lost to Jean Vellante back in 2015. Kind of a weird fight.
Not a good loss to have.
But then he loses to Shogun, who by split decision. Nothing to hang your.
A legend of the sport, a tough fight.
Then he gets KO'd by Jimmy Manawa. Then he gets.
That's a powerhouse.
Then he gets KO'd by OSP.
Another powerhouse.
Yeah, and then just recently, his last fight in UFC, he got KO'd by Jan Blachowicz.
So really, if you take away the Jean Vellante fight, he has fought the top of the division.
Yes.
And he's always kind of been in that top 10 of the division, win or lose. So it's tough, right? But I think that loss was the last straw.
Yeah.
Because as you mentioned before we were recording, he wanted the title fight before he fought Jan. I don't think it was warranted, though, so I'm fine with him fighting Jan. That was a number one contender fight, and Jan shut his lights out.
Yeah, because before the Jan fight, he was on a 4-fight winning streak, but these wins were against Patrick Cummins, Glover Teixeira, which, in hindsight, looking at what Glover's
the Glover we just saw against Anthony Smith, that's a pretty good win.
That's impressive. But then you got Ilir Latifi, and then Johnny Walker, obviously. And Johnny Walker, and Latifi, not to walk over him, he's a tough guy. And then you got Johnny Walker, who was like a lot of people.
He was a stud coming into that fight.
I literally had heard on multiple occasions people say this is the guy to beat John Jones.
He's going to be the champ.
Which in hindsight, it's ridiculous.
Yes, it is.
I'm not saying I still believe in Johnny Walker.
Super young, very talented.
I still think that guy can be something great.
Oh yeah.
But it was just the hype wasn't really warranted at the time.
Yes.
And Corey Anderson pretty much made him look like he didn't belong in that fight. And then Corey, after the fight, says, "I want the title shot or release me." And I was like, I was like, man, you just had a great win. Like, I hated that he kind of soured it like that for me. Because I'm like, light heavyweight is not a stacked division by any means.
I think it's one of the less not struggling division, but it's just a weaker division right now in the entire UFC.
I agree. It's a weaker division, and
still great talent.
Yeah,
but
of course.
There's just when you look at some divisions, you're like, wow.
You just compare it to the rest of some of those divisions.
Just two off the top of my head that stand out in the UFC is lightweight and welterweight.
Yeah.
And middleweight. I mean, it's just
bantamweight, like
they're all so stacked.
Yeah. So, ultimately, like getting a win over a guy like that could warrant a title shot in a division that's kind of looking for those new title challengers, because really, the division's been dominated by two guys for
the last decade.
It's been John Jones and then Daniel Cormier. And really, Daniel Cormier's only dominated that division when John Jones has been off doing other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy.
So
and you don't see that in other divisions. Yeah. Outside of flyweight, the men's flyweight division.
But
so
I guess I didn't see the the title shot for him. I thought the fight with Jan Blachowicz made a lot of sense.
That was a number one contender fight to me.
Yeah, and ultimately.
And Jan looked good.
Jan looked great. Knocked him out about 3 minutes in the first round, and you really can't say anything after that. Like you can't continue to.
So you either take another fight, or in this case, you go to another great organization and try your luck. Right?
Yeah,
that's all you can do.
And
he's still a great fighter.
Yeah, and I think our knowledge of Bellator is pretty limited, I would say.
Yeah, I definitely don't watch it enough.
Yeah, and that's something that hopefully over time we will start to learn more about.
Exactly.
But ultimately, right now, Ryan Bader, another UFC alumnus.
Yes.
The
double champ. He
is the heavyweight and light heavyweight champion over there, and
a great wrestler.
Yeah, and
Corey's a great wrestler.
I'm sure Corey's going to go over there and do very well. Is really my point. But
realistically,
I don't know if he'll be the champion.
Do you think Corey maybe just needs one win in Bellator and he gets a title shot because he's new blood?
I mean, probably,
I'd have to look at their division. Yeah, again, we don't watch it enough.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. I will say, though, that I believe they announced Bader would be defending his light heavyweight title, and it would be his first defense of that title
in a long time.
3 years.
That's crazy how you can have a champ. Yeah. That's wild.
That is pretty wild. So, we wish all the best to Corey.
All the best, Corey. All the best, Ray Borg.
Yeah, so maybe we'll see those guys again. But while talking about Bellator,
one last little relative news story.
A guy who's been a Bellator lifer. Been there
a decade?
Yeah, it's been a decade. Starting at Bellator 31.
That's
and
wild.
He just fought Friday at Bellator 243, Michael Chandler.
Against Ben Henderson, I think.
Against Benson Henderson.
Another legend, really, of the
guy,
game.
He was the lightweight.
He used to be lightweight champ.
Lightweight champ of the UFC. And he got a very decisive victory there in a first-round knockout.
And it was I watched a couple replays of the fight. I didn't watch it live. A shot that really kind of just happened out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And it was like not a big hook, not a big uppercut. It was just so precise.
Right.
Boom, landed clean, and that was it.
So, from what I've gathered, this is essentially Michael Chandler's first time being a free agent, because that was the last fight of his contract. So it's the first time he's been able to go out and test the market and try to see what he can get. And a lot of people are calling for him to go to the UFC.
It's like a Ben Askren storyline almost.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
There's been a lot of talk about him going to the UFC. And
is he lightweight? Welterweight?
He's lightweight, but I believe he also fights.
I think he's fought welterweight, right?
So he's currently lightweight, but he's also fought.
And I believe he's like a great wrestler. So you got to think, coming into this lightweight division, in the UFC anyway, we're talking if he gets signed in the UFC.
Yeah.
I mean, he's getting put in. He's going to face a top 10. If he were to get signed in the UFC, his first fight would be top 10. and they're all just straight killers.
Yeah, that is a tough division to come in.
Welcome to the UFC.
Yeah. It's definitely going to be interesting to see if he does join, kind of where they match him up at. Like, where do they kind of see him starting out? You saw with Ben Askren. They threw him in with Robbie Lawler.
Ruthless.
Yeah.
Robbie Lawler dominated the entire first round. The fight ended in the second round?
No,
it was in the first?
So, it actually, the
Bulldog?
fight, what's funny is, like, when you look back on it, it feels like it went a lot longer than it did.
Yeah.
That fight only went like 3 minutes.
God, so much happened in 3 minutes.
But in the first 20 seconds,
you're like,
literally,
this is why
Robbie-
Ben Askren hasn't fought in the
Robbie
UFC.
slammed him
Yes.
on his head.
And beat the living pulp out of
And
him.
then ultimately Askren gets the bulldog choke.
Controversial.
Some weird stuff there with if Robbie was actually out or not. It was kind of weird, but ultimately it was a W for Askren.
So basically, if you're dominant from another organization,
Yeah.
the UFC's not gonna mess around. They're gonna get you someone to prove yourself, and
Yeah.
I think that's interesting for a lightweight because that is the most stacked division in the UFC right now, in my opinion. So
Yeah.
that's tough.
Yeah, it's going to be tough for him. It'll be interesting to see where they match him up. If I look at the lightweight rankings, I could see him totally coming in and fighting a guy like Alaquina.
That would be fun.
Yeah, or like Gregor Gillespie. Like, I could imagine. I feel like a guy like in that kind of 7 to 12 range, even
Yeah.
like Paul Felder. I like the
Ooh.
sound of that fight. Maybe someone who has a little more of a name to him, Paul Felder being a commentator.
And you almost want, if you're the UFC, or if you're a UFC fighter, you want to welcome this guy and be like, okay, this is why you were in Bellator, and this is why I'm in the UFC.
I kind of love the idea of a Paul Felder fight because Paul Felder is
beast.
a company man.
Yes.
He is a commentator. He is a company
Welcome
man.
to my organization.
Yeah, so then you have this guy that is a Bellator guy.
And a Bellator beast.
Yeah,
He's been
you
an
have him
animal.
come over, and that's no small task. It'll be a good test to see kind of where he fits in that division. If he's really a top 10 guy,
Right.
if he's a top 5 guy. I mean, that's the number 7 ranked lightweight right
Yeah.
there.
Again, all hypothetical. He
Yeah,
hasn't
sure.
signed
Yeah.
anywhere, but
So-
if he were to come
So
to the UFC,
needless to say, it's interesting at
yeah,
least.
yeah.
And
It's
then
fun playing
Yeah.
matchmaker.
And then the last news story today, this is the big one, in my opinion. The co-main and main event have been announced.
Hello.
I guess it's possible they could put a third title fight.
It's
in.
flyweight title night at
Yeah.
255,
Yeah,
baby.
and for now it is the co-main and main event. So the co-main being Valentina Shevchenko versus Jennifer Maia for the women's flyweight title.
It's fun. It's
and
fun.
Then, as of now, the main event. I'm just saying that just in case there were to be another title fight put on.
You never know.
You never know. You have Davison Figueiredo,
Hello.
the
Straight
scary,
killer. He is scary.
newly crowned, by the way, but scary men's flyweight champion.
Could easily, in my opinion, fight at 135.
Yes.
He's big.
And he is going up against the former UFC bantamweight champion who is moving down in weight to challenge him for the title, Cody Garbrandt. So, Dom, give me your initial thoughts on these two fights and kind of, just where's your head at? with
So, women's flyweight first, right? Valentina is unreal. She's so fun to watch. She's so good.
this? She's dominant.
Striking is just beautiful to watch. And she's a beast on the ground, and she showed that. So that's where, with Jennifer Maia, we're talking a BJJ specialist, right? Just came off a submission win. This could be fun. A real challenge, I think, for Valentina. She fights a lot of strikers, I think. Caitlin Chukagian is a wrestler, but at the end of the day, Valentina was able to control the fight and keep it standing.
Yeah.
But I think if Valentina gets taken down, she can defend herself. So it's really going to be how good is Jennifer Maia on the ground. It's a fun fight, and I'm curious to see how it plays out. The main event, or did you can speak on the women's flyweight, I guess.
Really, the way I kind of see it, Jennifer Maia looked really good against Joanne Calderwood. That was last weekend.
I see the jab coming.
No.
Okay.
Not yet. No.
That's a story for another day.
But she beat Joanne Calderwood.
A tough fight.
Tough fight.
And Joanne had the title shot, right?
Yeah.
And said, "Screw it, I'm going to fight."
Yeah.
That sucks.
That's the risk you take.
Yeah.
But shout out to her for taking that fight. I
Yeah.
mean, it sucks that she, got beat like that, but I think it does speak to kind of like she's game,
Oh, yeah.
And Jennifer Maia came in and looked fantastic.
Yes, she did.
But
She's big for that weight class, I noticed, too.
Mhm.
I thought she was significantly bigger.
what I will say though is Valentina is literally on a level of her own in that division.
Yes.
She is just like
Masterful
incredible.
to watch. Yeah.
And I really don't see this fight going any other way but Valentina finishing.
Dominating?
Yeah.
A
I don't,
finish?
Well, I don't. Okay, I don't. That's definitely a ways away. We still got that's November,
Right,
so
right.
we got some.
We're
time.
jumping the gun.
But I will say, I as of now, maybe when I go back and watch some of Maya's other fights, I might feel differently. But I can't see this going any other way, but it being like just a slaughter.
It's hard.
No disrespect.
To say it's gonna be,
no disrespect to Jennifer Maia.
It's hard to say anything less, judging off the performances Valentina has shown.
Right. But then, as get
Our
your
boy,
thoughts on the main event.
No Love, right? Now remember, at the beginning of this episode, we've met Cody.
Yeah.
I got a picture on my phone. Everything, right? He's our guy, another Ohio boy.
Yeah.
I don't like this idea. And I've shared this with you before. I'm nervous. My thought process is TJ did it, right?
This is so.
TJ did it juiced up.
Yes.
On steroids, or on EPO, I should say. And still got clocked by Henry Cejudo.
Yes.
Henry Cejudo, in my opinion, is not as powerful as Davidson Figueiredo. This is a scary fight for me for Cody. Granted that he showed a weak chin recently. He did have a long layoff, and I think that helped kind of restore some of that chin health. He looked great in his last fight against a Sun Tzu. And I think Cody can win. And I think Cody's not going to struggle with the weight cut because he's not that big. Mm-hmm. He tweeted or posted on Instagram last week. He's like 146 right now. And if they're not fighting until November, 21 pounds, he should be able to do that. He's wrestled his whole life, so he knows how to cut weight. He's never had issues cutting weight. So I think it's a fun fight, but as a Cody fan, I'm going to show a little bias. I'm nervous. And my thought process is if he gets knocked out or just loses in general, what does he do next? He goes back to 135, obviously, but then he kind of hurts himself a little bit, in my opinion, after coming off a dominant, beautiful knockout, buzzer beater knockout.
Yeah.
So it's a risky fight.
It really is. I can tell you I'm very excited for this fight. I think it's going to be a banger of a matchup.
It'll be a great breakdown when the time comes.
Yeah, and I hate that like I have a dog in this fight. Like I hate that because we are biased to the Ohio guys. Like,
and there's not many of them, so that's okay.
I don't even want to say biased. We root for them. Yeah, we root for the Ohio guys. Outside of Jessica I don't root for her. But that's regardless. With Cody, like you said, he's shown a susceptible chin. He got knocked out in 3 straight fights. Then, that fight against the Sun Tzu was really like, okay, is this guy gonna is he still relevant even? Like that was kind of the I guess the kind of my thoughts going into that fight at UFC 250.
That was the Cody I was waiting to come back.
Right.
The patient, technical Cody, not the one that just goes in, chin up, hands down, sling him.
Looking for like a bar fight.
So that part excited me because I think he's more mature. So yeah, that was a good part of that fight.
And I expect this fight to be a banger. And it'll probably be a fight, again, we'll get into that when the time comes, but I mean, that's probably a fight that there's no way I see that fight going to a decision. No way.
No. Absolutely not.
And Cody, man, like that speed, like if you see that knockout, that's the knockout of the year.
You blink, you miss it.
Like, and Davidson though with the power, like it's just.
He looked genuinely terrifying in his fight against Benavidez.
Yeah.
The second one especially.
Yeah. The second one, the fact that there was no.
It was hard to watch for me.
Oh, it was. I mean, it literally felt like a horror movie.
Yeah.
Like seeing Joe B's eyes just glazed over as he's being.
And a guy that a lot of people like. A great fighter, been at the top forever. It was tough to see that, but man.
And Joe B's still, he's still one of the top guys.
Oh, yeah. I think that showed how good Figueiredo is.
Yeah.
Hopefully I said his name good enough.
Yeah. So yeah, any other thoughts about those fights?
As of right now, no. Without spoiling our podcast way in the future, I think that's a good, just kind of, those just got announced.
Yeah.
And that's a fun night of fights, especially if they stack it with some other good ones. Those are two very interesting title fights.
Oh, I will say, though, from the UFC's perspective, I think it makes a lot of sense making the Cody fight.
Yes. From a business
I know
standpoint.
some people were not happy about it online because Cody, obviously, it's the story that we've heard multiple times where a guy who hasn't fought in the division ever but he has, basically became champion of a different weight class, goes there and immediately gets a title fight.
The thing is here,
it's not obviously it's not, I guess, fair or whatever you want to word it there,
but they're bringing attention to the division.
Yeah,
so it sucks for those contenders, but at the same time, if this can get eyes on the division, I think it could be a good thing. I will say, if Cody does win, I want him to defend the belt. I don't want him to just do what TJ was attempting to do.
Kill the division.
Yeah, and just kill the division. I don't want that to happen.
Yeah, I'm curious if that's what he's wanting to do.
They're fun guys to watch. The speed that they all perform at. I know you're not going to see the big knockouts all the time, but they're fun to watch, I think. They don't get enough credit.
I agree. So, I guess moving on from there, we'll get into
last night's action.
Yeah, last night.
Or for the day we're recording, anyway, last night's action.
Yeah, so...
UFC Vegas 6? Number 6 at the Apex.
Yeah, so I'll say Saturday night.
Yes.
We saw the main event, heavyweight scrap between...
We did. The Black Beast, Derek Lewis.
And Alexei Oleinik. Derek Lewis getting the second round. It ended up being declared a knockout instead of a TKO.
TKO.
So Dom, I'll be completely honest. I did not catch the fights live, but I was able to go back Sunday morning.
Yes.
And
you gave him a review. You watched them over.
I was able to check them out before doing this podcast. But you did watch them live.
I
Not
did.
only did he watch them live, folks, but he also has a notebook with notes.
I do. You can't see it. One day maybe we'll have the camera, but I have a notepad in front of me here. I took some notes. Derek Lewis, my main takeaway is he looked better on the ground. Oleinik wasn't trying to do a bunch. He basically, I mentioned this when you came here today, he basically just wants to squeeze something. And if he squeezes it tight enough, you're probably going to go to sleep or tap. Derek looked good on the ground. He stayed calm. He stayed composed to get out of the first round, I should say. And then, man, let's be honest, it didn't take long in that second round. Derek Lewis comes out with a flying knee, and he's been known to do a crazy thing a time or two. Yeah. And for how big Derek Lewis is, he's agile. He'll throw some head kicks. He'll do the flying knees. So he comes out as soon as the second round starts. Boom, flying knee. Connects to the chest. Didn't hit on the face. But then sets it up beautifully with a big overhand. I can't remember if it was a left or a right. And it just clocked Oleinik. Sat him down, and then from there, he goes in for the kill.
Finishes the fight.
He gets the TKO. I wrote in all caps on my notepad, "The Black Beast," man. That's 3 in a row for him now. And I think... well, you can discuss your thoughts on the fight, I guess, first, before we talk about what's next, right?
Really, I think we're on the same page there. Derek Lewis looked, that was an impressive knockout. I will be completely honest, going into the fight, I really thought Alexei Oleinik was going to get the submission.
Yeah.
That was kind of my prediction going in. I'm not really sure, I guess I just felt like Derek Lewis, I feel like he was trending downward for some reason.
He was. Even though he was on a win streak.
It's
right?
weird. It's I guess, he had that big moment back at UFC 229 where he got that,
7 seconds left in the
Hail
fight.
Mary knockout.
Man.
And then he got on the mic and says balls were high.
He was riding a high horse, and he got a title shot because
He got a title shot the very next month.
Yeah.
Saved that card.
Really
People
did.
forget that card was supposed to be headlined by Poirier versus Nate Diaz.
Oh, a fight I would just love.
Yeah,
to
people
see.
forget that was supposed to be the headliner there, and then that fight gets pulled out. So, in steps DC,
a fight that you really like. Let's be real. Even though Derek was on a high horse, he was not in a good spot going into that fight. Like he was not in a favorable spot.
No.
DC is just, you kind of knew DC's going to win this fight unless he gets caught.
That was the feeling going in.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess like Oleinik, you know, he was a guy, like, you see his record. The dude's had over 70 professional fights, which
crazy.
You just never see.
46 finishes.
Yeah, like
or it might even be more finishes, but 46 of them were by submission.
I'm pretty sure I remember his record's like 57 and 24.
Yeah, it's wild.
It's wild.
4 decades of fighting.
Yeah. And he said he wants to continue for 10 more years.
He's good enough. Well, I don't know about 10 more years, but he's good enough to at least compete with the top dogs. He showed.
And I just saw he has kind of impressed me in his last couple fights. So I was like, I really thought this was going to be a big win for him to kind of get into that top 5 of the heavyweight division. Because Derek Lewis, number 4 ranked heavyweight. Oleinik, number 10. Really thought this might be a fight that would get him up there. Didn't go that way. That first round actually looked good for him.
Yeah, so Derek was on top for a while. And I do want to point out the weight difference, by the way. Derek was at the cap of 265. Oleinik was only 227.
Yeah. So
a 38-pound difference, which baffled me when I saw that when the fight started. So Derek starts off by just laying on top of him, and golly, I mean, that'd be tough. But I wrote here, Oleinik had very good sweeps on the ground in the first round to get on top. And then again, like I mentioned, he just kind of held on for the squeeze. Don't know what kind of choke he was trying to do, but
that's what he does, man.
Yeah, man. I guess his grip is just so tight, it don't matter.
Yeah.
He gets a hold of your neck, one way or another, he's going to try and put you to sleep.
And then, of course, second round starts and basically done before it even began.
Yeah, Derek Lewis wanted him out of there.
Yeah, so Derek Lewis put him out of there. And what's funny about Derek Lewis is when you watch his fights, he's a guy like, he doesn't, you know, he's a heavyweight. He doesn't move around a lot on his feet. Like, he kind of just takes. Like, he's pretty, trying to think of the word. Like, he's not like bouncing on his feet and stuff. Like, he's pretty standing.
He's flat-footed.
But you're right when you say, like, he's got some, like,
he pulls some stuff out of his ass.
Yeah, like for being a guy that just kind of just stands and bangs, like, as far as his stance and kind of how he moves, he shows a lot of fluidity on his feet. Yeah. That's what I'll say. Like, being able to do some switch kicks and things like that.
Again, a flying knee.
Like, you know, and I won't say that they're set up super well all the time. A lot of times they're pretty telegraphed, but still, he's throwing them. You don't see a lot of that in the heavyweight division.
Right.
But yeah, very impressive win for him. And I think even a bigger takeaway is kind of Curtis Blades calling him out on
and
Twitter.
It's a fight that makes sense.
Yeah. Curtis
that
Blades
probably should happen.
Being the number 3 ranked heavyweight. Basically right now for the heavyweight division. You got Stipe as champ. He's fighting Daniel Cormier next Saturday.
Oh, that's going to be a fun episode, by the way.
He's fighting Daniel Cormier. It's the 3rd fight in their trilogy, the last one.
Oh.
And then, so Daniel Cormier, number 1 contender.
We all know who number 2
Number
is.
2, Francis Ngannou, waiting in the wings.
Ooh.
He is waiting.
He calls himself the uncrowned champ right now.
Yeah, and you know we'll see how it goes, but he's likely going to be the guy getting that next title shot.
Yes, for sure.
I think that's because, you know, then right after him is Curtis Blades.
Right.
Mind you, Ngannou has
2 wins by knockout over Curtis.
The first one I believe was a submission.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I could be wrong about that.
You've watched it more recently than me, right?
So, but their second fight did end in like less than.
It was the one in China. It was on at like 4:30 in the morning.
It literally ended in like 45 seconds.
Yeah.
So
which
Curtis Blades
is how his fights have been going recently.
And Curtis Blades is in a tough spot because of that. Because really, you know, there's not a whole lot of reason to give him a 3rd fight with Ngannou.
But you can't skip Ngannou for a title shot.
Yeah. So that's why it makes a lot of sense to match up Derek Lewis with Curtis Blades.
And they've never fought.
Yeah.
Which is interesting to me.
For the heavyweight division especially, where it feels like everybody's fought everybody.
Right.
All the time.
Yes. I think that's a fun fight. People argue Curtis is boring. Even Dana himself, you know, he's not the biggest fan.
Right.
But at the end of the day, he does what he has to do to win. And he's very good at wrestling. So he's going to utilize it.
If anybody, you know, I get it. Some guys are going to have more boring style. I think wrestling tends to be a less, I guess, aesthetically pleasing style of fighting for the casual viewer.
Unless you're Habib.
Right. Unless you're someone who's just super active on the ground.
Right.
But because if you're someone who's a casual viewer and you're watching someone wrestle, you're literally kind of just looking at a guy and it looks like they're just kind of laying and like holding their opponent down, basically. There's more to it than that, obviously, but for anybody who says Curtis Blades is boring, I would ask them to go watch his fight with Overeem.
Oh, goodness.
Dude.
You're giving me nightmares.
I'll paint the picture for you guys.
Ooh, it's an ugly picture.
Curtis Blades in top position on the ground starts throwing these vicious elbows.
Brutal.
At Overeem's head.
Got split in half.
Yeah. Overeem's trying to cover up. Eventually, one just hits perfectly.
Oh.
Blood starts gushing out of his head.
Oh,
and he just
kids, if you're watching, cover your ears.
And he keeps hitting them, and it's like, oh my gosh, stop the fight. He's already dead.
Right,
like,
yeah.
It's like, yeah, and because of that, like, that dude's got some weapons, you know.
Yeah.
He
it's just when he utilizes them.
Yeah. And, I mean, he did the job against Volkov, man. Volkov is a dangerous dude on the feet.
Yeah.
So you take him down, and you control him on the ground. That makes sense. And he did it. If you don't like that, then like tough shit.
Yeah, right.
So
I think that is the fight to make.
Derek Lewis. What I like about this is Derek Lewis is a very powerful guy in the heavyweight division.
He is. Yeah.
But he's not Ngannou powerful. He's like because Ngannou's kind of in a league of his own.
He is.
So you have Lewis, who's kind of like, as far as power wise, a lesser version of Ngannou. So for Curtis Blades, you know, I think it's a good matchup for both guys because Derek has shown that he's had some trouble when guys just take him down and wrestle him, although because he doesn't tend to have a lot of technique to get out of those scrambles and whatnot, while Curtis Blades has shown some trouble with powerful strikers, being able to get he's never really been knocked out, but he's at least been finished, so it tells you that, like, you know, he can at least get his equilibrium knocked
This is your classic wrestler versus striker.
Yeah, and I like the matchup. I do.
I think it's fun, exciting. I think it can happen by the end of the year. I do want to point out before we move on to the co-main, in the post-fight interview last night, outside of Derek Lewis saying he had to take a shit live on ESPN Plus, he said he wants to cut down to the high 240s or mid 250s.
He's been saying that
before he fights again. He has said that for a while. But if he does that, that's interesting. I'd like to see how his body adjusts, and I think that makes it better for him cardio-wise to keep up with a wrestler like Curtis, but only time will tell.
And I guess for the other side of the main event, Oleinik, you know, I pulled up his record here. It's actually 59, 14, and 1.
That's insane.
That's insane. So he has this loss to Derek Lewis. Prior to this fight, you had him beating Fabricio Verdum, which was a fight where Verdum just looked very sloppy, might be the word. And Oleinik looked pretty good. So then before that, he armbarred Maurice Green. Pretty impressive showing there for him. And then he loses to Walt Harris and Overeem. Before that, he beats Mark Hunt, Junior Albini. That's going back to 2018, essentially. So I don't really know what's next for him. I could totally see him, you know, fighting a guy like an up and coming prospect like Augusto Sakai.
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing actually. Yeah. Looking at the rankings, I think a fight like that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, you could always match him up with,
or maybe even like, I'm looking at a list here of the heavyweight division. Mm-hmm. JDS and Rosenstryker fighting soon. So maybe the loser, not the winner.
Could even
I don't
match him
know.
Up with some. I would be nervous for him if he took like against someone like Volkov.
Right.
That's potential there. I don't know. Maybe that makes sense because him and Volkov both coming off losses. That's kind of how the UFC, at least how a lot of matchmakers tend to place fights, as guys that are coming off losses fight, guys on win streaks fight, sort of go that direction. But Yeah, it'll be interesting to see kind of where he goes from here. It's he's definitely his style of fighting. While he's been finished, a few times, it lends itself to a guy who can maybe stay afloat for a while in the top 10.
Yeah.
So, will not surprise me to see him bounce back in a big way. But I guess going from there, the co-main event.
The return to middleweight for Chris Weidman.
The former
middleweight champ. And let me just preface this by saying, in my best GSP impression, I was not impressed by your performance. It was not a good performance by either fighter.
Mm-hmm. And mind you, he did beat Omari Akhmedov,
yes.
who is the number
11 last night.
11 ranked light heavyweight.
I haven't seen...
Not light heavyweight, middleweight.
Middleweight, 185. I haven't seen Akhmedov fight enough to know a ton about him. I know he's a beast, but even... I don't know. It was a weird fight. They both got tired very quickly. It's hard to believe that Weidman used to be, a title contender and could go 5 rounds, especially being a wrestler.
Mm-hmm.
These guys always have great cardio. Last night, he did not have it. I don't know if it had something to do with the weight cut or what it was, but at the end of the day, he did do enough to grind out, I believe it, or at least in my opinion, 29-28, but regardless, he did get the win. I wasn't impressed. He'll crack the top 15 again because he beat number 11. I don't know, man. He looked vulnerable on the feet to me. He looked sloppy on the feet. In my notes, that's what I have written.
My biggest takeaway, now I know Weidman's never been like a super fluid striker.
Yeah.
But when you are a guy who knocked out Anderson Silva, which I know, I know that's. But I'm just saying, when you're a guy who has at least shown that he has enough of an understanding of striking to knock out the best striker the UFC's ever seen.
Yeah.
Regardless of if he
was how it happened.
Playing with his food and all that shit. But that was my biggest takeaway, was he looked
sloppy, awful
on the feet.
It did not look good. Any top 10 contender in the middleweight division, in my opinion, you got to think these guys are killers too, man. And a lot of them are strikers.
That's what's crazy to me, is he just beat the number 11 guy. So let's say, so why is he supposed to fight a guy like Shabazian next?
Literally what I was about to say. I think that's a fun fight. Other than that, do you give him like a Tavares or an Ian Heinisch, who's kind of been on a roll lately?
I like the idea of him fighting like Vettori.
Yeah, there's definitely options, but at the end of the day...
you see, what we're talking about there, that kind of matchmaking is really like these surging prospects. I know Shabazian just kind of knocked off his high horse, but... These surging prospects essentially being paired up with the aging out vet.
The Weidman that I saw last night, and again, it can get better. Mm-hmm. He's got a great corner. He's moving full time to South Carolina. They mentioned last night for Wonder Boys camp to train with him. If he doesn't improve his striking, he's not going to get close to the top 5. He's not going to get close to the top 10, let alone the top 5 in this division right now.
I know he beat the number 11 guy last night, but to me, neither guy looked like they were top 15.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
If you look at those guys below them, Vittori's looked a lot better. Yeah. And Heinisch has looked a lot better. Brad Tavares, even though he's a guy who's been finished by some of the top... he was finished by Shabazian. Yeah, he was finished by Adesanya. Yeah. He's had some tough fights, but that dude's...
Strike-wise, I pick him all day against Weidman. The Weidman from last night, again, is what I'm saying. He can improve, I get it. But if the Weidman from last night continues to show up, he's not going to touch.
So if you look at Weidman's record, right, basically, all right, so he wins the title against Anderson Silva. Then they immediately rematch. He was pretty much, he was winning the fight up until... second round, Anderson Silva.
The nastiest injury in UFC history.
Yeah, so kind of there's some asterisks there.
Yeah.
But then he goes on to beat Lyoto Machida.
He was a stud. He was the best in the world.
And then in 2015, at the end of 2015, loses his belt to Luke Rockhold.
Because of a silly mistake.
Very tough fight, though. He got beat up.
And I just wish I could have seen that fight without the spinning wheel kick.
Yeah, whatever that
Why
was.
in the hell would a wrestler throw that? But he knows that. He knows that's kind of the reason why the fight went downhill. But nevertheless.
So that was December 2015. He does not come back until November 2016, where he goes up against Yoel Romero.
Ooh.
What a tough
Brutal.
hell that was.
Brutal knockout.
Yoel lands a flying knee.
Nasty.
Immediately just opens up his side of his head and finishes there. That was November 2016. Then April 2017, you have that weird fight with Gayard Mousasi, where his hand wasn't down, because there's the rule where if your hand's down on the mat, you can't be kneed in the face because you're considered a down opponent.
Yeah.
So Gayard kind of pulls him up just enough to land it, but they're able to review it and see that his hand was off the mat, but he was not able to continue fighting, so it ended up being a TKO for Mousasi. Then he comes back and beats Kelvin Gastelum. Impressive performance.
That was his best performance in recent memory.
Yeah. And then from there, he was knocked out by Jacare, which he actually looked good in that fight, I thought.
Yeah.
He ended up getting knocked out in the third round, and I don't know if he would have won that fight if it had went to a decision, but he looked good in that fight. That Weidman would destroy the Weidman we saw last
year.
time.
I wouldn't even.
But mind you, that was just in November of 2018. It's not been that long.
Seems like forever ago.
And then he gets knocked out by Dominic Reyes in his move to...
A move that didn't need to happen.
His move to light
We've seen that for 2 middleweights now. Him and
mind you,
Rockhold.
gets knocked out in under 2 minutes. So, and Dominic Reyes is...
phenomenal striker, though.
Yeah. So,
undefeated. Well, was undefeated.
So basically, since the Vitor Belfort fight, his third title defense, he is now 2-5.
In 6 years? 5 years?
2-5 in the last, basically, 5 years.
So he's not been active either. Of course, he's had injuries and stuff, but that's tough, man. A guy that used to be the best in the world. But that happens, I guess.
I mean, so I hope that maybe this was kind of a... I don't know what you call
I hope he just looks back on that performance of last night and knows, okay, I need to make changes if I'm going to compete again.
Yeah. And really, he's probably just got to focus on the wrestling, man. I mean, if maybe there's an age thing going on there where he can't really set up his punches or his kicks the right way. So he just didn't look comfortable on the feet.
Yeah.
And to the credit of, I guess, that fight is that that was a test for him, Akhmedov. That's a guy who is ranked number 11 for a reason.
Yeah.
And Weidman did decisively win that fight. So, regardless of the fact that neither guy looked good, and it really wasn't that good of a fight to watch, in my opinion. So, we'll see what's kind of next for him. I feel like he's going to get paired up with kind of a surging prospect, like I said.
More than likely.
And he's going to be looked at as the aging vet. So, will he pull a Derek Brunson against Shavazian, where he looks incredible and it kind of boosts his stock again? Or will he be like Brunson against Adesanya, where he just kind of gets made to look pretty silly and like he doesn't belong? So it'll be interesting to see. I don't really know what's next for Akhmedov either. Really, that fight, really it doesn't give me a lot of I don't know, it doesn't make me excited to see him fight.
No, not at all.
Yeah, so I guess going from there, I just want to get your thoughts. You obviously with your notes and everything, you had a lot more attention to this card than I did.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what other performances on the card stuck out to you? Anything that really stuck out, or what fights maybe were really good?
So the third fight of the night, or of the main card, again, we're only going over the main card here. Maki Pitolo and Darren Stewart. It was a middleweight fight. I was excited. I sat up on my chair a little bit to watch that one. Mm-hmm. Super aggressive, both of them. Came out swinging. Darren Stewart, by the way, looks like Tyron Woodley's twin brother.
Yes, he does.
It was crazy.
Yes, he does.
Both looked good. No weaknesses to me. Patillo went into the clinch. I believe that's how it started. And Stewart locked in the guillotine. And he might have already been on the ground. But regardless, locked in the guillotine. And then he turned it in. They ruled it a guillotine finish, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. But he turned it into almost a darce, is what it looked like to me. And he looked good. neither one of them were ranked yet, but I think both have potential. Maybe not top 15 yet. Maybe one more fight for both. Thoughts on that, or to keep going down the list?
Yeah, I mean, it was a fun fight. Darren Stewart.
Short fight.
Yeah, short fight. Darren Stewart looked very good. I think I liked his placement on the card, being that third fight. When you have, obviously, the main event, which is a big heavyweight fight, co-main having a former champion and Weidman. Like, I think having him, right there puts more eyes on him.
Yeah, I think it was good having two middleweight fights back to back, and when one of those fights being these up and coming prospects. Okay, and then the next fight you've got two veterans.
Yeah.
So that was interesting.
The performance that really stuck out to me was the first fight of the main card.
Yes, I was waiting on you to bring it up.
Beneil Dariush.
Unbelievable.
He KO'd with a spinning back fist.
Listen, ladies and gentlemen, on my notepad, all caps, OMG spinning back fist.
Yeah.
Holy moly.
So he knocks out Scott Holtzman in just under or around 4.5
Incredible one-round fight.
Yes, it was.
Very good fight.
And I'm going to say it, even though Dariush missed weight by 3 pounds, which is we do have to make note of that.
Yep.
I love Dariush.
He's very good.
And he's
in the toughest weight class.
I think he's very underrated.
He has an incredible ground game. And look what he just did.
Right.
A spinning back fist.
Think about it like this. This guy is ranked number 14 in the lightweight rankings. And in the UFC, since his first fight in UFC was back in 2014, January of 2014. So he's been here. He's been here for a while. But really, based on, if you look at his most recent...
He's coming into his own now.
Yeah. His only losses that... he had this one loss, and I'm not going to try to pronounce this guy's name, back in 2014. But then besides that, you had Michael Chiesa.
Tough fight.
Edson Barboza.
Oh, we already
know. Incredible knockout there, the flying knee.
Ooh.
Yeah, that was to Dariush. And then he gets knocked out by Alexander Hernandez, who seems to have his steam has kind of faltered a little bit since, but
still
was
a
guy that was a
prospect.
prospect.
Yeah.
Besides that, though, man, I mean, you have to think he knocked out James Vick. He submitted Drew Dober, the guy who I really like.
Yeah,
I love Drew Dober. And then, really, he's on a 5-fight win streak now. The last 4 of those have been by finish. I mean, I'm ready to see this guy get a top 10.
1,000,000% needs a top 10 fight.
I hate that missing weight is a part of this discussion, because I was so impressed by him, and also I guess I was impressed by him, but I also just really was impressed by his character too. Post fight,
very humble,
says that the UFC, because he
yes.
put on an amazing performance.
Yeah.
And if he had made weight, he would have got a performance.
1,000,000%.
But he said that they should give it to his opponent since he missed weight.
And when do you see that happen?
Which is just an awesome move on his part. Based on what's ahead of him in the rankings,
I'm gonna go ahead while you pull it up. I'm gonna shout out, I think, a fun one. Right, we're talking a number 14 ranked Dariush. He probably doesn't move up because he didn't beat a ranked opponent. Maybe he'll bump up 1 or 2.
And he missed weight. I don't know.
To me, I'm looking at 12 through 10 here, or even 12 through 9. 2 that stand out to me that I think is a fun matchup. Islam Makhachev. That's probably mispronounced.
I think it's Makhachev.
A stud Russian fighter, or Kevin Lee. Those 2 stand out to me as a fun fight. I don't know
if you heard, Kevin Lee just blew out his other knee.
Oh, no.
So he
unfortunately
will be sidelined for probably about a year.
Give me Islam against Dariush. I think that's fun.
Hell, you know what? I even like Cowboy Cerrone versus Dariush.
Off topic from last night's fights, Cowboy said recently, news coming.
He was talking about
That's interesting.
He was hitting at a fight, and I don't know
who that could be or what weight class it could be.
Maybe number 15 ranked.
I'm just glad he took a damn break.
Maybe, yeah, I am too. But think about it. He's ranked number 13. Maybe it's the number 15 ranked Drew Dober. I'd love that fight.
That would be a fun fight, man.
but who knows? Dariush, I definitely want to see that guy get like a fight. Since he's 14, I'd like to see him fight someone from about 8 to 12. It's kind of what we said about Michael Chandler.
Yeah.
Hell, make him be Michael Chandler's introduction to the UFC.
I mean, if like you said, if Kevin Lee's injured, Islam would be fun, or maybe even Raging Al would be fun. One of those two.
Even Diego Ferreira.
Interests me. Yeah. I think you can't give him much higher than Diego at number 8.
Yeah, I agree.
And then from there, say he wins again, then we're talking, 1 or 2 more fights and you're in title contention.
Yeah, because tell me if I'm wrong, but Diego has not fought since that impressive performance over Anthony Pettis. Yes, that's the last time he fought.
That was this year, beginning of this year?
January.
It was on the Connor card with a Cowboy.
Yeah,
okay.
So performance of the night for him and everything, but hasn't fought since. And, he was the guy that going into that fight, Anthony Pettis, dude, everybody knows Anthony Pettis.
Yeah, right.
Not a lot of people knew, at least not for me. I remember being kind of like, I don't really know.
Yeah,
this
same.
And he looked awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And, had some hype off that. And he just hasn't really fought since. I don't know if he's had any injuries or maybe just not wanting
the
to
COVID
fight
stuff.
with everything going on.
Right.
But
that would be fun.
I'd like to see him get back in there. And what's funny is Ferreira only has 2 losses in his career.
Yeah, he's a beast. 17-2.
One was to Dustin Poirier.
Hello, the diamond, baby.
Guess who the other one was? Beneil Dariush.
Wait, they fought before.
They fought back at UFC 179 in October 2014.
I mean, what a time for a rematch.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
I'm leaning more toward the Islam, but that's fun. I didn't know they fought before.
Yeah. So I just now caught that, so I think that would be very fun as well.
I like that.
But I think Dariush has a lot of options. I guess if there's any other performances that stuck out to me, Kevin Holland, dude looked like...
He wasn't on the main card, but put my mans on that main card.
He was on the prelims.
Coming off, last week, he got screwed, right? Because his opponent, unfortunately, fainted before the fight, right?
Yeah.
So he didn't get to fight. He was all game to fight Ed Herman on like an hour's notice. They weren't able to pull it off. So then he takes a fight on 1 week notice against an up-and-coming debut, I think he said.
It was his UFC debut, yeah.
And man, Kevin Holland's good.
Yeah,
Landed that straight and just dropped him. He's a stud,
He looked
man.
really good. And I really do want to see that guy get some more eyes on him, whether it be on the main card of a fight night or even... I mean, some of those...
A prelim headliner on a pay-per-view.
Yeah, for sure. So, besides that, I mean, were there any other performances that really stuck out to you?
I mean, the other fight we haven't talked about on the main card, and not too much to take away from it, but Yana Kuniskaya.
Yeah.
She dominated her fight against Stoliarenko.
I don't know if you want to try to pronounce it.
I had never seen Stoliarenko fight. Really, it was a clinch fight the whole time. Yana dominated it. I've never seen someone want to pull guard so much in recent memory than Stoliarenko. But Kuniskaya just outstruck her so much. I'd love to see the final stats because it wasn't even close.
I kind of, when I was kind of looking more into some of these fights.
And again, this is women's bantamweight.
Yeah, and I was trying to get kind of some of my predictions in mind. This fight, I really did, was probably the only one that I really predicted, fully correct. I said Yana by decision.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, her opponent, this was her first UFC fight. She had fought in Invicta once before this. But besides that, or actually that's not true. She fought at the Ultimate Fighter finale back in 2018, but had a gap there. She also lost that fight. So, Kuniskaya, former title challenger,
ranked 8th now.
Yeah, it just seemed like this was made to be for her to kind of show off a performance.
Yeah, and I mean, her husband, fiance, boyfriend is Thiago Santos, so she has a pretty great.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
Oh, I did not know that.
She has a phenomenal training partner.
Oh, that's awesome.
She looked very good.
I'm curious, did you really feel like that performance, because that was really tailor-made for her to show off?
I think it was just a dominant. I didn't expect anything else.
Yeah. I mean, this is a girl that formerly challenged Chris Cyborg, right?
Yeah, you got to think that was at featherweight. I think she looks better at this weight class.
Yeah, I agree.
She's very tall, but muscular and built well.
Right.
She's ranked 8th. I mean, I'm looking at the list here. Maybe a fight like Raquel Pennington. You know, a number 5. Probably wouldn't go any higher than that. I'd say Raquel Pennington would be fun, or the Aldana. Irene Aldana's ranked 6th.
Yeah, because she was supposed to fight Holly Holm.
Yeah, she was supposed to fight. So unless they reschedule that.
Right.
So yeah, I'd say a 5 or 6 opponent. She gets another win there, and then she's in the top 5. But nothing too huge to take away. Again, it was someone making their UFC debut, you said. So she did what she was supposed to do, and it was dominant, though. So
also, I will note that our very first fight of the night, our very first fight of the entire card, so 6 p.m., first fight of the prelims, we saw the very first UFC fighter to come from the country of Jordan.
Wow.
Ali Al-Kazi, I believe is how you pronounce it. He lost in a split decision to Irwin Rivera. That was Al-Kazi's obviously debut. Rivera had already fought in UFC before. I just want to make note of that because I just love the fact that like MMA and really the UFC as in general, it is a worldwide thing, and I love that it's becoming much more embedded in the culture of these different countries.
Yeah.
I mean, really, it was put like these other countries are the ones that brought it to the United States. It's not like the United States is the one that came up with it. You know, you go back with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu,
exactly,
the Gracie family and all that. I mean, even if you go over to Asia, like China, Japan.
Yeah, man, thousands of years.
Styles.
Shout out Wei Li Zhang. Hello.
Like, you know, you go over to Greece, the Roman Greco, wrestling, things like that. So
it is truly...
I just wanted to point that out, even though he did lose. Like, I just think it's really cool that, like, we're still getting that kind of stuff. Like, guys...
Yeah, fighters from countries that have never fought in the UFC before.
Yeah, so that was really the last, I guess, thing I wanted to point out here. Was there anything else you wanted to make note of?
I don't have any other notes on the notepad.
Okay.
I mean, that's all I've got from the August 8th UFC Apex, or UFC Vegas 6. I don't even know what they're calling them anymore. Lewis Olenek.
Yeah.
It was a good night of fights overall.
Yeah, so I guess going from there, we're going to kind of wrap this up here. And we're just going to talk about what's going on the rest of the week. Wednesday.
Big week coming.
Yeah,
this is our debut week.
Yeah, so
and we're coming out swinging.
We're going all out.
We're going like Derek Lewis throwing flying knees.
So Wednesday. Our first of what for now we're just calling like our special videos.
Episodes.
Yeah. And I don't. We may come up with a different name for it over time.
Yeah, it sounds a little weird.
But for now, it's just like basically it's an episode where we can kind of just talk about. For me, and I think Dominic can agree, we're historians of the sport. So we
enjoy it.
We love learning the history of it, digging back into old fights, like really breaking stuff down. So that kind of gives us an opportunity to do that on our Wednesday episodes. And this week, I think there's no better way to really introduce who we are as fight fans than to go over who are top 10 UFC fighters of all time. Mind you, this will be based on their performances in the UFC.
Yeah, all UFC here, based.
You know, I have some plans later down the line to go back to watch some old Pride fights and things like that. But for now, I think it's only fair that we judge based off what we know, and that is these guys in the UFC.
Oh, yeah.
So be on the lookout for that because
it'll be a fun one.
Yeah, because me and Dom, we're not telling each other who our top 10s are.
It's a secret.
So you're going to get some of our gut reactions. I imagine we're going to have a lot of differences, but also a lot of similarities.
Yeah.
So that should be a lot of fun. And then Friday.
Oh, baby, this is what I'm looking for.
Friday. I'm so excited to get into this.
I just got chills.
Yeah. The pay-per-view next Saturday is UFC 252.
Mentioned it earlier.
Miocic.
The trilogy fight.
Versus Cormier 3.
1-1.
Yep.
Who is the greatest heavyweight of all time?
Yep. And we are going to have a big preview show for that.
We're going to break down the main card.
Mm-hmm.
We got big fights on that card. Mm-hmm. Sugar Sean is back.
Yeah.
We've got JDS versus Rosenstrike. We've got 2 other great fights. They're missing my memory right now, but one of them's a rematch that was controversial just recently.
Yeah.
It's going to be a fun episode. Cannot wait.
No, I'm really excited to really dig into that card.
Granted, most of our time will be spent talking about that main event.
Yes.
We can't wait to go over that one.
And there'll be some stuff to talk about on even like the prelims. Well, for you, when you were blanking on the main card, John Dodson's fighting on the
Yes,
main card.
hello.
I am not going to have a good time pronouncing these names.
Let's give it a try.
Magomed Ankalaev versus Jan Kudaleva.
Yeah, that's the rematch.
The rematch.
That's going to be fun.
So that card...
That should be a very... Like, I could see Dana on his, if you don't know, now you know.
Yeah.
That might be on there.
Yeah, and you even got guys on the prelims like Jim Miller.
Yeah, hello, a legend of the UFC.
Felice Herrig, a woman that's been putting on some good fights in the UFC for a while. Even Herbert Burns, the brother, I believe, of Gilbert Burns. He's on the Fight Pass prelims.
My goodness.
So they're, to me, what this card just we won't
embodies.
Get into what a lot of people, if they don't have like multiple title fights or these huge names on their card, Nate Diaz isn't fighting or Conor McGregor's not fighting. It's like, all right, well, this card's not like stacked or it's not good enough. Yeah. To me, what's really striking about this card is this, to me, comes off like some awesome fights.
Yes.
They may not be like huge names.
But, sometimes, just like sometimes you'll find this dive restaurant, eat a great piece of pizza. Mm-hmm. That's what these fights are to me.
Yeah.
They may not be the highest names or the highest ranked fighters, but they're going to be great fights.
Great fights are never made on paper. They're made in the octagon.
Exactly.
So ultimately,
that's quote of the day, folks. Wow.
So I think that'll be, I think it's going to be a great card, but we'll be getting really deep into that on Friday.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, that's pretty much our plans for this week. Dom, tell the good people where they can find you on social media.
Yeah, so are we talking personals? I guess
you can tell them about our
we created a Below Average Joe podcast Instagram, maybe a Twitter coming down the line, but we're starting with Instagram. Put some clips out there of some stuff, post some photos, all that fun stuff. So feel free to give us a follow. We've got our YouTube channel linked there. It is Below Average Joe's _podcast. Feel free. You'll see the logo there. You'll know that's us.
Yep.
Give it a follow. Turn on notifications if you want.
Subscribe.
It's going to be, subscribe to the channel. We're new to this thing, right? But that's okay. Give us a subscription.
What about your
personals, if you feel free. Most of the things I tweet about are about sports. UFC specifically at DSalee14 for Instagram and Twitter. And Noah, go ahead and plug yours, Buck.
Okay, yeah. So my Instagram and Twitter also the same, at @NTBaker_. NT as in Noah Todd. So feel free to find me on there. I'll probably be plugging a lot about our podcast over the next coming weeks while we still try to
get this thing off the ground running.
While we try to grow our Instagram and everything. So be on the lookout for updates on there. But like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and
ring the bell. Turn your notifications on, people. We're going to be bringing that content.
Yes, sir. And anything else?
That's all I've got.
All right. Then you all have a great Monday, and we will see you on Wednesday.